It felt like a regular morning. The kind I usually love. Soft light coming through the blinds, the smell of fresh coffee, that little pocket of silence before the world rushes in. I was still in my robe, scrolling through emails, when my phone rang. It was work. A client crisis had exploded overnight, and they needed me on site, immediately. No time for second thoughts. I said yes before I even stood up. My heart kicked up a notch. I've always been the kind of person who handles pressure well, but there's still that flutter of adrenaline when things go off script. I grabbed my suitcase from the closet and started packing on autopilot, blouses, chargers, laptop, heels I probably wouldn't wear, but packed anyway. I kept telling myself, it's just a few days, you'll be back before the weekend. I didn't feel anxious. If anything, I felt focused. I was in go mode. Carlos met me at the door, still sleepy but sweet as ever. He smiled, kissed my forehead, and even carried my bag to the curb. "You've got this," he said, like he always does when I have a big day. And just as the cab pulled away, he texted me, "Miss you already." That made me smile. I looked out the window, thinking how lucky I was to have a man who understood me. Or so I thought. The cab ride to the airport was quiet, just the hum of the engine and my own thoughts keeping me company. I checked my email again, double-checked my client files, and tried to mentally prepare for whatever disaster was waiting on the other end of that flight. I wasn't nervous. This was the kind of chaos I was good at. Still, a small part of me wished I'd had more time to sit with Carlos to actually say goodbye, not just rush out the door like it was any other morning. At one point, I scrolled back to his message, "Miss you already." It felt sweet, comforting. I even smiled, imagining him probably back in bed, the dog curled up beside him, maybe watching one of those crime shows he loves. I felt grounded in that moment, like no matter how crazy work got, home was still my safe place. He was my safe place. That thought stayed with me as we pulled into the airport drop-off. I paid the driver, grabbed my bag, and stood for a second outside the terminal, taking a breath. The air was warm, a little sticky, and the airport buzzed with movement, people rushing, reuniting, saying goodbye. I felt oddly calm in the middle of it. I sent Carlos a quick photo of the departure sign, added a little plane emoji, and wrote, "Here we go." Then I turned and walked inside, with zero doubt in my mind that everything back home was exactly as I'd left it. I made it through the line at check-in without much hassle. The woman behind the counter smiled, handed me my boarding pass, and I remember thinking how smooth everything was going. No delays, no forgotten documents, no last-minute panic. I even had time to grab a tea before security. For once, everything felt easy. I let myself relax, just a little, and sat near the window, watching the planes taxi in and out like clockwork. I opened my laptop, hoping to get a head start on some notes. But instead, I found myself staring out at the runway, thinking about Carlos, how he'd smiled at me that morning, how gentle he was when he said goodbye. It wasn't anything extraordinary, but in those quiet gestures, there was love, the kind that doesn't shout, but shows up every day. And that to me had always meant everything. As the gate announcement echoed through the terminal, I gathered my things and stood up, ready to board. I felt steady, certain, confident that my life was exactly what it appeared to be, full, stable, and safe. But just before I took that step forward, something unexpected happened. My phone buzzed, one message, and with it, everything I thought I knew began to shift. I was just about to walk toward the gate when I felt my phone vibrate in my hand. I glanced at the screen without thinking. It was a text from Mrs. Ramos, my elderly neighbor. At first, I smiled. She usually messaged me about her garden or if a package got left at my door. But this time, the message hit differently. "Hi, Julia. Could you please turn down the music at your party? It's really loud again." I stared at the screen, blinking. What party? My stomach dropped. I read it again, slower this time. I wasn't home. I was here, standing in Terminal C with a boarding pass in my hand and a plane waiting at the gate. My mind raced through possibilities. Maybe she texted the wrong person? Maybe Carlos was just playing music a little too loud while cleaning? But it was 10 a.m. on a weekday. That didn't make sense. Something about it felt off. Very off. I hit call immediately, heart thumping harder with every ring. When Mrs. Ramos answered, I could barely get the words out. I asked her what she was hearing, what she saw, and then, there it was. The sound in the background, bass thumping through walls, people laughing, voices shouting over music. "It's been going on for hours," she said gently. "I just thought you were home." I didn't even say goodbye. I just ended the call and turned around, already pulling up a ride back home. The airport noise faded as I rushed outside, the buzz of the terminal replaced by the louder hum inside my chest. I couldn't shake the images running wild through my mind. Was it a few friends? A misunderstanding? Or was it something worse? I didn't let myself answer that. I just kept moving, fingers trembling as I ordered the cab. I didn't even think about canceling the flight properly. Work could wait. Whatever this was, it couldn't. The driver barely had time to greet me before I slammed the door shut behind me. "Home," I said, more force than I intended. The ride back felt like hours, even though it wasn't. I stared out the window but didn't really see anything. Every turn of the wheels seemed to pull me closer to a truth I didn't want to face. And yet, deep down, a small part of me, quiet but persistent, was already preparing for impact. I checked my phone again. No text from Carlos, nothing. Just the last one he'd sent earlier, "Miss you already." The words now felt like a joke, like a line from a bad play. I hated myself for even thinking that way, but I couldn't stop. My chest felt tight, my throat dry, and still, I clung to hope. Maybe it's all a misunderstanding. Maybe this is nothing. But something in my gut whispered otherwise. As we got closer to my street, my heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. I asked the driver to stop a block early. I didn't want anyone to see me pull up. I needed a moment to breathe, to think. I stepped out of the car slowly, clutching my bag like it might steady me. My shoes crunched over the sidewalk as I moved closer, each step heavier than the last. And then, I heard it. The music, real, loud, unmistakable. I froze just past the neighbor's hedge, half shielded by the branches. There were voices, lots of them. Laughter. Someone shouted something I couldn't quite make out. There were cars parked all along the street that I didn't recognize. I looked up at my house, my home, and it felt foreign. The curtains were half open, and through the front window I saw lights flashing. Not just a couple of friends. This was a party, a real party, in my house. My hands were shaking, but I moved forward anyway. I didn't even try to be quiet. I just walked straight up to the front door. I noticed the porch first, empty bottles, a jacket slung over the railing. My front door? Unlocked. That did something to me. A final, cold realization settled in my chest as I reached for the handle. I pushed it open, stepped inside, and saw everything. The moment I stepped inside, the air hit me, thick with sweat, perfume, cheap alcohol, and something else I couldn't name. Music was blaring, bass vibrating through the walls I'd painted myself. And there, right in the middle of the chaos, was Carlos. Laughing. Like he didn't have a single care in the world. Like I didn't exist. People danced around him, drinks in hand, some barely dressed. I didn't recognize a single face. No one noticed me at first. I stood by the door, invisible in my own home, suitcase still in hand like I was just a guest. I scanned the room slowly, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. And then, Carlos, flirting, whispering into some woman's ear. She giggled, touched his chest, and he didn't pull away. He leaned in and kissed her, right there, right in front of everyone. Right in front of me. Something inside me cracked, but I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just watched, every second burning into memory. His smile, her hands, the way his arm slid around her waist like it belonged there. That moment, frozen in time, tore through every illusion I had, and finally, as if the weight became too much, I stepped forward. I didn't need to shout. My presence alone sucked the oxygen out of the room. The music didn't stop right away, but the energy in the room shifted the second people noticed me. One by one, their laughter quieted, their movements slowed. I felt every pair of eyes turn toward me, like I was the intruder, like I didn't belong in my own living room. Carlos froze mid-step, a drink in one hand, his other arm still lazily wrapped around her. His smile faded the moment our eyes met. He stuttered my name, just once, but I didn't answer. I couldn't. Words felt useless, too small to carry what I was feeling. Anger, yes, but deeper than that, humiliation, betrayal, a hollow, burning ache I'd never known before. I didn't need to ask questions. The truth was all around me, in the lipstick on the rim of a glass, in the ashtray full of cigarette butts I never allowed indoors, in the knowing glances from strangers who now avoided my eyes. I stood there, still and silent, while Carlos awkwardly stepped forward, trying to say something, anything. I saw panic flicker behind his eyes. Maybe he thought I'd cry, plead, demand an explanation, but I didn't give him the satisfaction. I just turned around, slow, deliberate, and walked out the door. My hands were steady now, my chest no longer tight. Whatever came next, I would not be the broken one. And deep inside, something had already begun to take shape. The door clicked shut behind me, muffling the music, the whispers, the lies. I stood there on the porch for a second, just breathing. The night air was cooler than I remembered, and I welcomed it. It felt clean, honest. I looked out at the street, quiet, untouched by what was unraveling inside that house. Our house, my house, or maybe it never really was. I didn't cry, not then. I walked to the curb and sat on my suitcase like it was some kind of anchor. My hands rested in my lap, strangely calm. There were no tears, no dramatic collapse, just a sharp, cutting awareness. Everything had changed, and not in a way I could ignore. A part of me had died in that living room, but something else had stirred. Something clearer, stronger, cold, maybe, but focused. I pulled out my phone. No more waiting. No more hoping he'd come to his senses. I opened the camera and snapped a photo of the house, music still thumping through the walls, strangers laughing inside. That would be the first piece of evidence. I wasn't going to scream or beg. I wasn't going to make a scene. I was going to build something. Quietly. Carefully. Because if he thought that party was the final word, he had no idea who he was dealing with. I didn't sleep that night. Not a single minute. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the cold cup of coffee I'd poured hours earlier, and let silence wrap around me like armor. I wasn't spiraling. I was calculating. While the world outside slept, I made a list. Names, numbers, evidence. I knew exactly what I had seen, and I also knew what I was going to do. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about clarity. The first thing I did was download every photo and video I could find, from the neighbor's security camera, from public Instagram stories, even a tagged post I found on a party girl's profile. There he was, center frame, red Solo cup in hand like a college kid. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't been so pathetic. I saved it all. Carefully. Quietly. And then I called a lawyer. Calm voice. No hesitation. Just business. I didn't tell Carlos I'd come home. I didn't give him the chance to lie, to scramble. He texted me the next morning like nothing had happened. How's the trip? I stared at that message longer than I should have. I could almost hear his voice in my head. Smooth, casual, still pretending. It made me sick. But I didn't reply. Instead, I called his boss. I had a few things he might want to know about how his employee spent company hours and company property. The next call I made was to his mother. Not out of spite. Never that. She'd always treated me with kindness, always called me her other daughter. She deserved to know who her son really was. I didn't raise my voice, didn't embellish. I simply told her the truth. What I saw, what I heard, what her son had done while I was packing bags for a business trip. She went quiet. Then she whispered, I'm so sorry. That was enough. I wasn't doing this to humiliate Carlos. I was doing it to reclaim myself. I'd spent too many years keeping the peace, brushing off small things, telling myself he just needed space, or time, or rest. But there's a limit to self-sacrifice. There's a moment when silence becomes complicity, and I wasn't willing to carry his secrets anymore. Not for him. Not for anyone. I'd finally realized dignity doesn't mean staying quiet. Sometimes it means being seen. So I planned a party. My own. Not with booze and strangers, but with intention. I invited close friends, family, his colleagues, even the neighbors. I made the invitations sound elegant. An appreciation dinner, I said. A thank you for support during my recent transition. I dressed in a sharp navy dress, hair pulled back, calm and composed. No one suspected what was coming, and honestly, neither did he. He walked in late as usual, unaware that this time, the spotlight was mine. Dinner went smoothly. Polite conversation, soft music, wine glasses clinking. Carlos was charming, of course. He always is in front of an audience. He shook hands, hugged people, even kissed me on the cheek. I let him perform, let him believe the mask still worked. But when dessert was served, I stood up and tapped my glass gently. Before we end the evening, I said, smiling, I have something special to share, a little surprise. The lights dimmed, the projector clicked on. At first, there was confusion, party footage, loud music, blurry shots of people dancing in our living room. Then came the clearer moments. Carlos, laughing, drinking, kissing. Gasps filled the room. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." A fork clattered to the floor. Carlos froze, eyes wide, mouth half open. He looked at me, panic rising like heat. I didn't look away. I didn't need to explain anything. When the screen faded to black, I turned to the room and said, clear and calm, "He told you I was out of town. Turns out, he was out of character." I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood there in silence while everyone else absorbed the truth. And in that silence, I felt something shift. Power returning, respect realigning. And Carlos? He couldn't even look at me. He just sat there, shrinking in his own shame. And that was only the beginning. The fallout came fast. Within days, Carlos lost his job. Apparently, his boss didn't find the footage as entertaining as Carlos thought it might be. Unbecoming conduct, they called it. Something about ethics, company reputation, public image. I didn't gloat. I didn't even speak to him. I just watched, quietly, as the world he'd built on charm and shortcuts began to cave in on itself. His family pulled away too, especially his mother. She called me after the party, her voice shaky but clear. "I had no idea," she said. And I believed her. There was sorrow in her voice, but also disappointment. In him, in herself, in what she hadn't wanted to see. I told her she didn't owe me anything, but she said she wanted to stay in touch. I think, in some way, she felt the loss too. Not just of me, but of the illusion. As for me, I didn't just survive it. I grew through it. Stronger, yes, but not hardened. Just more awake. I signed the divorce papers without a second thought. No begging, no bargaining. Just the simple truth written in ink. I was done. And when I handed them over, I felt lighter. Not angry, not bitter, just free. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying someone else's weight. I had space to breathe, to rebuild, on my terms. In the weeks that followed, I did something I hadn't done in years. I listened to myself. I took slow mornings. I walked without checking the time. I made coffee just the way I liked it, and actually sat down to drink it, not gulp it while racing out the door. I filled the silence of the house with music I loved, books I'd forgotten, and laughter, real laughter, with friends who showed up for me without needing an invitation. One of them suggested I write about it. At first I laughed it off. Who would want to read about that kind of betrayal? But the idea kept tugging at me. not to shame him, but to tell the truth. For women like me. Women who gave too much, forgave too quickly, and forgot their own worth in the name of keeping the peace. So I started writing, at first in private, then I shared a post, then another, and soon, strangers were writing back, saying, "You told my story." And maybe that's what healed me more than anything, realizing I wasn't alone, that my pain wasn't isolated, that it could mean something more than just a closed chapter. I started thinking bigger, a community, a space for women to speak, to laugh, to rebuild, without shame, without fear. Maybe I'd lead a group, maybe I'd write a book, or maybe I'd just keep walking forward, one clear, proud step at a time. Whatever it would be mine. Not long after, I found myself walking past the house with a friend. The music was gone, the windows were dark. The porch, once littered with bottles and strangers, was quiet again. She looked at me, concern flickering in her eyes, and asked softly, "You okay?" I paused for a second, not because I didn't know the answer, but because I wanted to feel it fully. And then I smiled. Not out of pride or spite, but peace. "He threw a party behind my back," I said, shrugging. "So I threw him out in front of everyone." She laughed. That good, surprised kind of laugh. And I laughed too. Not the bitter laugh of someone broken, but the kind that comes when you've made it to the other side of something heavy, when the wound has closed and you're stronger where it used to hurt. That kind of laugh. We kept walking, no need to look back. The woman who once rushed to airports and tiptoed around someone else's ego was gone. In her place stood someone softer, wiser, and finally whole. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need applause. I just needed my own story back. And now it was mine to tell.